Martin, thank you so much for joining Future Solving.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure to have you. I know it was 2 years ago that we first met here, but it feels like yesterday.
It does. Yeah, it's funny you're saying it because it comes back to what I call the transformation theory.
Okay.
And what's really interesting is, have you thought about this? When you go away for a weekend just to a place, you away for 2 days, you go to some exotic location, you come back again. Have you noticed how it feels like you're away for days and weeks, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What we discovered with one of our clients, Swiss International Airlines, was that the more transformation you have, the slower time goes. And that means you and I have been through a lot of transformation over the last 2 years since we met, and it feels like forever, right? And that's really interesting. That's what we're experiencing in every day of our life. We really have different transformations deciding and determining how we feel time is.
Wow. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think you're right. I know for me, and I'm guessing sounds like for you too, the last 2 years has been a great amount of transformation on the personal front, on the work front, across everything. I'm excited to talk to you specifically today because you're an expert in culture and in branding, and we're having an interesting moment in society around both of those topics specifically, and the interaction between them. Can you tell me your perspective on branding and culture? Maybe we should break it up into two, but just what are some of the things that jump out to you around culture and branding and AI?
Well, a lot. I mean, culture is probably the most obvious one right now. We are human beings. Human beings means we're human. And with AI, it's very clear that we are threatened in one way or another. We spend a lot of time doing ethnographic visits across the world. We just recently did it in 16 different countries just over the last 2 months. And people are petrified. Young people are petrified because they have no purpose in life anymore. Because, you and I probably were grown up with 2 roles maximum.
Right.
And now we know for sure you will have 6 roles and they will be completely different all the time. So there's no doubt about the AI is disrupting us, but it also means a foundation as a human being. We really don't know who we are and what our purpose is. And that impacts everything. It impacts how happy we are, the whole workplace environment question, and it impacts also what products and services people are going to buy. So that is in disarray. That's in chaos at the moment. On the branding side, that's in chaos too. The concept of global brands is dying. You will see that almost every single FMCG company in the world are going down at the moment. You'll see that personal branding has become a standard in everyone's textbook. But you also see how branding and perception increasingly have become such a topic that everyone manipulates the perception around them and the reality around it. So we basically, the whole reality is no longer real because we don't know what's real and what's not real. And this is just the beginning. So we have on one hand, people who are questioning themselves and the purpose. On the other hand, we don't know what's real and what's not real. And this is just the beginning. Remember, when AI and visualization is going to be even more advanced, we cannot define what truth is anymore. So talk about 2 very big question marks.
And they're connected, right? Because
Absolutely.
part of what at least for me, when I think about trying to find my sense of purpose, you want to look out in the world and look out at what's really going on, what's needed, where are the gaps, where can I, with my skill sets and my passions, where can I fill? So if everything seems already covered, seems already like the boxes are all checked, but that's a misperception, then you might have people that are earnest, have the right skills, could absolutely address something, but think, oh, there's already someone owning that space.
Yeah, and even worse, then you address it. But guess what? As you address it, the whole agenda is changing again. And it will change again and disrupt yourself. So once you finally get your feet on the ground, then there's a new agenda playing out. What it also means is that when we work with larger organizations around the world, as we do every single day, we talk about a workforce right now which is just not happy. There is so much politics, so much bureaucracy. Listen to this. We created what we call a bureaucracy index. It shows how many % of time you spend on bureaucracy.
Right, internal red tape and forms. And
the average for a company above 5,000 people is 65%. That means 65% of the time you spend is basically complete waste of time. It's like you going into a meeting room and you're basically sitting there 65% of your time and you're paralyzed. Nothing happens. Now think about that. This is my and your generation. Then we have the younger people, which today are walking into organizations, not saying, how can I help you, but rather, what can you do for me? Because that's what they're saying right now. Companies are looking at them saying, what's going on here, right? So there is a conflict. And then you have this whole thing about, I want to be rewarded. I want to have hope. I want to have all this stuff. And the big organizations are just making it worse and worse. So we see so much gap, so many gaps across everywhere, that we're heading towards a really interesting time. And when I say interesting, I mean the American version of interesting. It's not the British version, right?
Right. And it makes me wonder, because, you know, what you're talking about is it's an overlay of problems upon problems upon problems. And as you know from my work, I talk a lot about not just picking problems to eliminate and get rid of, but a future that you want to solve for and putting your energy there. Because I wonder, I think with everything you described, problem solving won't actually get us past where we are today. So I'm sure you help companies. I know you don't use the same wording of future solving, but help them set a vision for, this is where we have to go. This is the kind of social contract you need to have with your employees. This is the kind of incentive plans you need to have. This is the kind of trust you need to build with them through giving them, I'm guessing, things like a career roadmap that they can look forward to and see how the merit will get them, you know, help them in a progression, right?
Yeah, we kind of do that, but I use very different words than what you're using right now. I mean, one of the things I've realized is organizations today are seeing the world from inside out. They see it from my point of view. This is what we can deliver. This is what we serve. But very few companies are seeing it from outside in. They're seeing it from the consumer or the customer's perspective. So what I do is to spend time basically in consumer homes. And over the last 2 decades, I have lived or spent time in more than 3,500 consumer homes across more than 100 countries.
Consumer homes?
Consumer homes.
Okay.
Literally living them or spending time in them. And it's been an amazing journey to see and feel what people are experiencing right now, because it's changed a lot. What's really fascinating is when I take larger organizations, and we're talking those with 500,000 to 1 million staff, into the homes of consumers, they're shocked. They have no idea, because we're so used to reading spreadsheets and PowerPoint presentations that we think this is the reality. But the exchange of empathy is gone. And what I'm typically looking for, what we're looking for, is the gap between being in balance and out of balance. We are all out of balance. It may be I feel I'm too overweight, maybe I feel I have no friends, maybe I feel I have a midlife crisis, whatever it is, that's a gap. And that is the gap we always are searching for. And this is where we have the opportunity. And that's what's solving the problems you talked about. But it's just the problems from the consumer and customer's point of view is not the problem from the organization's point of view. That gap is getting bigger and bigger now. I cannot count the number of experiences I've had where this gap was extremely big. I'll give you an example. So a client of ours is Maersk. Maersk is the largest shipping company in the world. They sit on 21% of all trade. And we started to go to customer offices around the world. So I meet up with this customer in India, and I said to him, so how is it to deal with Maersk? He's saying it's horrible. It's a horrible, horrible, horrible. They're never on time, they never deliver, they never ship on time. It's horrible. So I start to realize as we do these interviews, that time after time I hear the same complaint. Go back to Maersk. I said to them, we have a problem. I learned from this guy that around 65% of all containers in the world are rolled every week. Rolling is when a container is leaving a harbor. If it's not leaving on time, it's rolled to the next week. Now, because you are not doing upfront payment as we do in the airline industry, but actually first on delivery, people are double booking.
Wow.
I said that to Maersk, and they said, no, don't be concerned. We're only 62%. Right? So we basically looked at this and said,
we're leading the industry.
Yeah, we are the industry leader, right? So I said, what does it take to change this? Now, because Maersk literally invented the container, right? They have been so engraved into this mindset, literally living within that square box, that they never asked that question. And the immune system, what we call the defense mechanism for change, was really so fixed that people could not really think about any other solutions. So we said, why don't we ask for payment? Now, we did work around the whole world. We took the Maersk employees into the offices. They experienced the pain every customer had. And once we'd done that, we introduced Maersk Spot with loading guarantee, which really was a revolution and is a revolution in the shipping industry. Share price up 300%, and it changed. Was it a brilliant idea? Not necessarily. It was pretty straightforward. It was the immune system, the defense mechanism for change, which held us back. And it was because the organization was seeing themselves from inside out, not outside in. And I think this is symptomatic for what we see time after time, almost with every single organization at the moment. And that's where we have the problem, right?
Right, like thinking about the context of, okay, this is how many, because they have their own goals, they have their own incentives, they're trying to get promoted, or they're trying to, whatever they're trying to do. And especially, I mean, I remember when I first joined I'm not going to name the company, there was a company I joined, and I was sitting with a group of VPs there. I asked the question, I said, of this VPs in the table, when's the last time any of you, and I meant this sincerely, not critically, but like met with a customer?
Yeah.
And it was just crickets.
Yeah.
They had nothing to say because so often, like you said, they're so busy preparing for CAP Council every couple of weeks to try to get funding approved for the next initiative that they want to do, or trying to put out fires around the organization, that they haven't been meeting with.
They haven't done that. But I will dare to put a name on.
Please.
Not on your company, but on another company which had exactly that experience. So one of the largest respiratory disease company in the world, the inhalers, based out of Italy, called Chiesi, actually did exactly what you're talking about. I asked them, how often have you spent time with the consumers, the patients? Now, this company has been around for nearly 100 years. And they said 0. They never spend time with patients. So they said, why don't we do it? So we started to go into patient homes. And I'll never forget this. I go into a home of a 28-year-old lady. And I said to her, you've had asthma your whole life? She said, yes. They say, how did it feel to have asthma when you were a child? And she started to cry. And she told me this story about how she was bullied in school. She has no friends. She was ditched from parties. And I said, well, it looks like you have a lot of confidence today. What has changed? And she pulls out a handbag. And out of the handbag, she pulls out a straw. He said, this is my magic straw. I said, what do you mean? He said, whenever I meet someone, I ask them to hold themselves through the nose and breathe through the straw for a minute. And then they feel how I feel. And then we connect on an empathic level. We took that idea, I shared it with the board. After about 30 seconds, one executive spit out the straw. He said, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever done. Who can possibly live like this?
Oh, no.
And I said, this is exactly how your patients live every single minute. And they're the one paying your salary. And if you could hear a penny drop, you would have heard it. Now, we took, to their credit, that very straw idea. And when a new person now work at the company, they get a box with a straw. And they have to breathe through the straw to learn how you see the world from a patient's point of view. We've forgotten about that. And we've forgotten about that because we do believe that you can take a human being and put it into a number. But we're still not that clever.
No.
At this stage, because if it were, even matchmaking on the internet doesn't work. They would, right?
Right.
We can't even predict
But you both like dogs and you like the same rom-coms.
Exactly.
You must be a perfect match.
Yeah, 2 legs, 4 legs, you tick. The reality is we're just not advanced enough of understanding that aspect. And that's where we get in our own way by creating an enormous amount of KPIs, which is blurring the picture, where it's actually very few KPIs are driven by what the customer consumer feels and think, and then let that become the underlying foundation for everything we do, right?
I could not agree more with you. I actually, one of the things I harp on is that, data is just a record of the past, right? And so you actually can't make a data-driven decision about the future because it's only a record of the past, right? And I love how you're adding more color to that, of saying how we can't really convert our reality, that woman's experience of being bullied and then this way that she's been driving empathy, that's not something you could really have found in a data set, right? That could only be a human-to-human conversation. And that leads me into a great segue into talking about, about AI in this space where I think that, there's this huge question of culture. There's already, like you described, this huge culture challenge within organizations. Then you add in this layer of AI as sort of this inciting incident, the narratives that are running wild right now about, 50% of entry-level jobs will be gone in the next 5 years because of AI, which I'm sure we both have lots of opinions about. But, there's these narratives that scare people. And I love your take on, when you go into a company where the culture is like you described, like they're scared, they don't see their own career path ahead, they don't really know. How do you help those leaders of that company look across their organization to be able to think through, how am I going to heal the culture of our organization? And also, because I think a lot of times people, and this may be a two-part question, but people see culture as this fixed thing that just is, as opposed to as something that you can actually create a strategy around. So the two parts is, can you design for culture, A, and then B is, how do you help leaders do that?
Well, first of all, you have to design for culture. And I think the biggest mistake which has been done is that you always believe that top-down is the way to do. Here's the issue, there's something called the frozen middle. And the frozen middle is really what's paralyzing a lot of organizations. And that means the instructions given from the top is paralyzed in the middle and never really reach the bottom. What I have experienced over the years is that if you want to implement an AI solution and get the culture with you, you need to co-create the AI solution with the culture, with the people. Not just do it as a top-down thing where we're going to say, well, I'm going to slash 25% of our workforce, because then there will be so much fear in the organization that there's no way they're going to work with you. But rather say, how do we create solutions which may eliminate your role as it looks like today, but in return create a career path into something else which will be intriguing, and let's find out what that can be. And let that become sort of a way for you both to open the doors to new opportunities while also eliminating existing formats which are not working. Organizations today do not do that for the most part. And they don't do that because, one, they're in a hurry. Two, the board or the senior management do not understand the severe ramifications AI and the fear of AI can generate in an organization if dealt with in the wrong way. I think this is really the answer to, partly the answer to this. Now, how do you get about it and how do you help leaders to navigate systems? I would say that AI is, like anything else, a tool, and it's very contextual. First of all, I think business leaders today need to get a grip around what is AI, and they have no idea, honestly. The only experience they have is probably ChatGPT and Alexa or something, and that's where it stops. I think a lot of CEOs are struggling to see the vision of how can that transform your organization. So one of the first things I would always advise them to do is to do simulation sessions where you simulate what that tool really can do, and you go as extreme as you can. And once you do that, you break it down to, okay, what does it really take to adopt it to that way? And then you create 3 different scenarios. One extreme ambition, one less so, and one is based on pure cost cutting. And once you can see that, I think for the most part, people really get a sense of where is this thing, what is it? No one has all the answers, for sure. But at least if we can, as Tom Peters say, predict 5 minutes ahead, then we are predicting the future. And I think that's what's needed, but you can only do that if you really understand the tool. So step 1, understand the tool, understand the consequences through simulations, and then say to yourself, now I can see the good, better, and best.
Absolutely. And then what you described earlier, it sounds like, is a line item. Instead of saying, we're going to take for granted, like, it's not just purely what amount of ROI could be gained from option A and option B and then option C where we do cost cutting, but that you also should be adding what is the organizational impact of all of them, where we get everyone in a growth mindset and they're all thrilled and excited and passionate and feel loyal, versus we scare everyone because we lay off tens of thousands of people. And even if the math there, without taking into account the social impact across the organization, looks better on paper, maybe when you add the social impact and the performance hit to those who stay behind, it's the worst choice you could make.
Yes, and it's a big problem, I tell you. It's very big right now, because what I see is that people are afraid. I would say that out of the 10 largest organizations we work with, 7 out of 10 the psychological safety level is so bad, so toxic, that it's not even fun to go inside those doors. And I think at this stage, if you then fuel that bomb with AI on top of it, people are going to do whatever they can to stop that progress. And that means the value you would get out of it, forget about it. It's going to be a fight in every corner. So people really have to be careful right now. Yeah.
I do know. I couldn't agree more. I'm seeing that in my work as well, is people that, like you said, they don't have AI literacy in the first place. So they're skipping to, okay, we need to have an AI strategy, but they don't really understand what it can or can't do. And then they often only see it as a Gen AI, solution, and not all the 27 categories of AI, which Gen AI is only one. I've thought about it this way. I'm curious how you, as a culture expert, would think about it. I think of an organization as, having the physical, like 3 layers, like a physical assets layer, like infrastructure and buildings and, real estate and facility, et cetera. And then having a digital layer like software and AI and all that. And then the top having a social layer that I feel like most leaders never think about, or are it's not as easy to measure as the other two, right? You can see how many facilities you have, you can see how much software you have and how many lines of code you have, but all the social interactions, even on a very junior level, like a financial analyst, all the social interactions between people that I think that in the AI story of AI can just do all this analysis and all these things, I think that's left off. What do you think?
I think the reality right now is we are losing the strength of being a human being right now. I cannot count the number of times where people brainstorm using AI, or cut corners because of AI, or develop their hardcore expertise in a report which is done by AI. And we slowly make ourselves obsolete in that game, which means that we end up by basically just being an extended arm of AI rather than actually us running that tool. When that happens, we end up with being obsolete. Very few people today are saying, okay, this is AI, okay? How can that enhance my work, but also make me deliver even better quality where I use my core skills the best way? They don't ask that question because we're so busy right now delivering stuff.
Right.
Because we have to tick all these boxes, reports and whatever.
Ship.
That we cut corners constantly. And that means from a neurological point of view that our brain changes. And that's extremely concerning. I mean, you probably can't remember more than 1 or 2 phone numbers.
Right. I mean, I can mostly remember them from my childhood.
That childhood,
yeah,
right?
Not as much today.
And not a single one recently, most likely. That means our short-term memory encoding has disappeared. Our creativity increasingly is disappearing. Our ability to memorize and recall memories, if we don't have a phone which is showing us a timeline with small photos on, whatever, is disappearing. Our eye contact is disappearing because right now you look into a camera lens, you're not looking at me in the eyes at the moment, right? So all these core skills we have as a human being are slowly disappearing. And then I have to ask you, what's left then? That's where we right now are using AI kind of in the wrong way, where because we are hardwired to be lazy. We really are.
We love shortcuts.
If we cannot press past this grass, we'll do it anyway if it's a shorter path. And that's how we are. So this is so addictive and so irresistible that we are on a very dangerous path. And that comes back to the question about, I think companies now need to guide people to get the best of being a human and what the real value is of that, and then let humans grow through AI and not the opposite. That message has not been sent out now at all.
Even people that you used to be connected to and like and trust are sending messages where you think, did you write this? I saw a joke the other day, your ChatGPT is showing. I thought that was such a good way to say that, but it's true. Like I have people who comment on things that I post on LinkedIn, for example, where I know 1,000% you did not write that. I'd be curious your take on how can they define, or what have you seen, or are you recommending to companies to think through, especially when they have fiscal obligations, but not necessarily social obligations to create a better society? So where's that nuance there for helping them, especially because I think probably a lot of them are made up of people who, when you talk to them one-on-one, would love to do that, but then you bring into the context of decision-making frameworks for profit sharing and all these other things and with shareholder management. And then suddenly, it's very tough to get something through because it'll be good socially.
It's very difficult. I think the best way to illustrate this is to take myself into the focus here. I don't have a phone. I haven't owned a phone for 9 years. I don't have a phone. Zero.
Amazing.
Zero phone,
wow.
Right?
Like not even a cell phone?
I don't have a phone.
Wow.
No phone.
So when you accepted my invite for this today, you were at your hotel on a computer?
Yes, in a PC.
Wow, okay. All right,
so
maybe, yeah.
I don't have a phone, and I made that decision 9 years ago.
Wow.
And there's 3 things I've learned from that. First thing is, when I meet people at a pub or a bar, and the person's not showing up, what's the first thing you do? You grab your phone and do anything with the phone so you don't look like a loser, right? So number 1, we don't meet people anymore. Yeah. Number 2, we don't see things anymore because this is the sunrise. This is my new kid being able to walk. We don't see things anymore. Everything is seen through a lens. But the third thing is the most important thing. We never get bored anymore. And boredom is the foundation for creativity. It's that pause in life where you combine 2 ordinary things in a new way. That reflection is gone because we're petrified of getting bored. Being bored, right? So in organizations today, we are working as people living in a stretch jacket because we constantly believe that productivity is the number of PowerPoint slides coming out, the number of spreadsheets coming out, the number of meetings, team meetings I can attend. I'm exactly this to the minute, I'm ticking the boxes. But that system no longer works because that's not where you get the most value out of things. And even worse, when I'm then in a Teams call and the co-pilot is now generating a conference report which may be good, but all the nuances are not there. So we lean up against something which is perhaps 30% less of what it is, and then we start to make decisions around that with 30% less because we are not using our creativity. So quality is going down big way at the moment, right? So what I tend to say is we need to carve out space of thinking time. And one of the biggest advice I always give to CEOs is Friday, no phone, no computer. Okay, that is the time for you as a leader to think about where you want to go. That is to think about the purpose, the vision, how you strategically are navigating things. You, dear leader, is not employed to fill out all these spreadsheets and do all that stuff.
All that 65% of bureaucracy.
You don't need to do that. Your role as a leader is not to manage people, it's to lead people. And I think that's where a lot of leaders are drowning in that bureaucracy, which is paralyzing their behavior. Now, just as the leader is doing that, all the managers down in the hierarchy should also have that day off where they think. And it's possible, but it does require that the organization realizes that human beings are human when they're given circumstances and surroundings which allow them to use the biggest asset, which is creativity. And we're not there yet. So I do think this is the first advice I'll give. The second advice probably would be that we need to reward people to work together better. We don't work together anymore. It's all in silos. Right now, bureaucracy is killing it because bureaucracy is not encouraging us to work together. It's actually doing the opposite. And the third thing is very interesting. Very simple. We need to have a new navigation point. Today we're more busy, again, navigating with my hierarchy of who I'm reporting to and I want to get higher in the hierarchy and all this stuff, rather than listening to your boss, and your boss is the consumer. And how often do you check in with that consumer? In every single company we work with, almost, we have an empty chair in the meeting room, which is the consumer chair. And we will need to have a real consumer sitting there, and that consumer will basically reflect on his or her view of what the situation is in that given day. That constant finger on the pulse is helping organizations to focus on what matters, which is outside in rather than inside out.
Right, absolutely. And now it's time for our game. So there are 2 scenarios in here, and I think knowing how efficient you are, we'll probably get to both. But you get to pick one out, you read it out loud, and then describe what you would do in that scenario using your frameworks and methodology.
Okay, sure. Very exciting, hey? Yeah.
Going to contextualize your thought leadership.
You just found out you are the hair to,
yeah.
to a major food and beverage company.
So imagine that you just found out that a major food and beverage company, you didn't know that you were related. It was family controlled. Your distant relative, long lost cousin, and everyone else for some reason is no longer available, and it's falling to you. You're now in charge of this company and leveraging everything you know about branding, because obviously food and bev is a very big branding space.
But the first thing I probably would do would basically be to start listening to where the organization is and spending a tremendous amount of time on just listening. Walk around the corridors undercover and get a sense for where are they? What is their thinking? What's the obstacles? What's the immune system like? And then the second thing I'll do is I would start to spend time with those consumers, and I'll find out how they feel about this product and figure out the gap between the reality of this company I've inherited and the reality of the consumer. Now, I bet you there's going to be a huge gap between those two, and that's where the problem comes. You need to, if you have a company like this, be willing to question if this company at all should be in existence. And if the answer is no, you should be willing to, with the funds you have available, to reset it. And at that stage, what I would do then is to go into the system and find people which are not necessarily leaders of the organization, but people which have innovation and thought leadership and have a disruptive mindset, and make them become charge of those new disruptions within the organization.
I love that. And then let's see. I think we have enough time for the last one.
Yes.
And this one, I'm going to say, I'm going to caution you not to approach it too similarly to your last one. Maybe jump a bit forward in terms of. You go ahead and read it, and then we can.
You're named CMO of one of the top AI companies. Fantastic.
So now you're the CMO. So I know that obviously that you could start with the same process you just described. So if you maybe think less about that and more around like, what are some of the types of the way from a process perspective as a CMO specifically that you would, or ideas that you might have, or experiments you might try?
I think the most important thing is that they need to understand. People in AI companies, they need to understand the human psyche better. I've increasingly come to realize that, sorry, it's no offense to all the amazing programmers out there, but increasingly they force their language and their way of seeing the world on top of us, people. And what happens is that you get these, it doesn't make sense. Why they're using that term, why they're using these phrases, why is the navigation like this? And it's so much done in an isolation from people and not nerds. And I think the consequence of that is that we are almost adopting a whole language which is not intuitively our language. So the first thing I would do as a CMO is to make this become much more human in the visual language, in the way I think the company will innovate, the spaces will go into, and also I think the most important thing in what this company should stand for. The AI company, in a world where it can be basically everything, they need to focus on one word. And then they need to say to themselves internally, how do we secure ownership of it? How do we focus on that? Because it can be so much, but if you focus on it, there's a lot of spaces available. Focus on one. And then every communication, both externally, but also the navigation, the interface, and the icons used, the intuitive voices used, the words, the phrases used, the rituals it executes, all that stuff would have to be aligned around one word. Once you do that, I can tell you that AI company, assuming the foundation of their work is amazing, will do extremely well, because very few, if any, is doing that right now.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us, Martin.
Thank you.